Gemini. Now I'm on parental leave. I'm an active member of our testing community in Romania. It's called Tabula Testare, translated it's testing camp. We have lots of events in different cities. And I have my own project that you can find on train4it.com. But the first question is, why the title? Because it seems that the etymology of the word management has something to do with horses. Apparently, a long time ago, working with horses involved a lot of planning. It was quite an effort. Imagine that it's very difficult for us to perceive this, but imagine that you need to go from one place to another. You have to use horses to get there faster. So the horse had to be clean, fed, you have to take some food with you, preferably some, let's say, high energy food, because you cannot wait for the horse to graze for like 2 or 4 hours just to eat some grass. So you need to have something. It was quite a challenging activity. But I believe in some aspects we kind of tend to think of teams and managing teams as just like managing small pieces of puzzle, putting them together, getting things to work out. So we all know that there is a difference between a group and a team, right? You always perceive this. And it's especially important, let's say, for employers. This is the ad that I photographed somewhere in Berlin. It was just for a coffee shop. It says, welcome to our teams, come and work with us. Apparently being in a coffee shop is being part of a team. This one is from a pet store in Romania. This one is from a bread store in Romania. Everybody says, come and join our teams. Apparently, team has an appeal. This is a statistic that I got from a job site in Romania. There were like around 3,000 jobs containing the word team. Come and join our team. Do you know the Scrum Guide? Yeah? Any idea how many times the word team comes up?
0.
So it's around 102 times, and if you count the statement Scrum team, it's around 150 times. So even the Scrum guys believe that the team is something important, but how can you, let's say, define the team? How can you get a group to become a team? And a big question is the team important for testing? What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, but why?
Because it is a responsibility of the entire team, not only of a group of professionals called
True. True. But I believe it's especially important for testers because you need to go over the, let's say, handing over stuff. If you start to work together, you manage to produce more than each of us individually. So you need to get to that state where being together is more useful than being independent. So what did I do to understand things better? So I read a lot of articles, a lot of information, and then I thought, okay, on a big picture everything makes sense, but how to get it together? So I started to make a couple of drawings up until I ended up with this one. So every information that I knew and got in regards to team, I split into several categories. The team effectiveness models, the people, management, team, customer side, motivation, engagement, interaction, and HR. It's actually a small website that you can find here about teams.train4it.com, and on each area, when you click, you either get a link or a picture or something that I believe is useful. Usually there are not things that, let's say, go with the status quo, are challenging things. Like for instance, on positive thinking. Who here believes positive thinking is a good thing? Okay, I believe it's not. So I'm on the other side. Because I believe that it's not all just fine and dandy. There has to be a struggle. Of course, you need to stay positive. But when I say positive thinking, I think of a person that sees a bunch of shit and says, look, a unicorn has passed by. That's what I understand by positive thinking. And in many situations, I believe that we need to have a struggle with each other. We need to compromise to get to a certain point. There is a story told by a guy who's called Yves Moriot. You can find him on TED. And he says something like, there has to be a struggle, because at home, you mentioned this, I have two TVs. Why? Because I want to watch a football game and my wife wants to watch something else. You cannot do that in business. If everybody had their own TV, it wouldn't be effective anymore, efficient. In business, you need to produce more with less. You need to find a way to compromise. And it says something like, if we work together in a business, I hold you by the neck, you hold me by the ear. And together we find a compromise. That's not like positive thinking. So you need some sort of struggle. Generally, these kind of articles you'll find in there. But before we begin, I need to give you a small warning. Trying to acquire experience with theory is just like trying to satisfy your hunger by reading the menu. So I will talk a lot about, let's say, theoretical stuff, but with some practical appliances. But you need to remember that you need to practice. And there are a lot of things that depend on, let's say, your cultural aspect. I don't know if you know this, in the 70s, IBM was, let's say, the biggest corporation worldwide. And this guy, Gerd Hofstadter, worked for IBM in the HR department. And they noticed that there are different ways that people behave in different countries. So he developed something called cultural dimension. So this was in the 70s, so a long time before I was even born. So there are a couple of, let's say, indexes. One of them is called power distance, and it's something like the degree to which the majority of the people accept that power is distributed unequally. Translated into simple terms is like you tolerate authority. Just because somebody has a title, you tend to stay on your place and agree with him or don't challenge him because he has a title. This is how it looks for Romania. It's almost impossible. So people tolerate and accept that power is distributed unequally, and they wait for someone to take a decision. They have to agree with him, and they just follow it. It's kind of, let's say, the boss way. How do you think it looks for Bulgaria?
Pretty much the same.
100%.
It's almost there. It's almost there. And just to see a difference, this is how it looks for Germany. So somewhere between 96 or 85 down to around 38. So it's something like 50%. So what does this mean is that they don't perceive authority as being right, but we do. I tend to believe this has something to do, let's say, with our communist heresy. So we, probably not many of us, but our parents, our grandparents, lived in a system where authority was the shit. That was it. If you got a name and a title, that was it. Another one is individualism. It's something like the degree to which an individual is expected to take care of him and his immediate family or friends. Again, huge difference for Germany. Okay, so we're somewhere on the same side, Romania and Bulgaria, but for Germany, people act more individually. And there are a couple other indexes, we will not go through them. You can, if you just Google Gerd-Hofstadter cultural dimensions, you'll be able to get the numbers compared with different countries. The point that I want to make here is that a lot of the research that has been done has not been done on us, but on certain groups of people that might be or might not be representatives. So whatever I'm saying today, you need to take it and tailor it to your context. And also, expect to fail from time to time, because not everything works in every place. So what I will talk about today, there are around 80 areas, so we cannot cover all of them, about this team effectiveness model, goals, but also the growth mindset and moving motivators. So let's start with the team effectiveness model. This refers to the system of getting people to work together effectively and efficiently. Do you perceive the difference between these two terms? It's like doing the right thing and doing the thing right. So, in what I've searched and what I found out, there are like 10 models that overlap somehow and are complementary. Usually they are displayed within a triangle shape, because there is some sort of evolution. But there are some like the management 3.0 or the Google model that are a little bit different. But let's get through some of them. But before we do that, one small point. Many of the models overlap. I'm trying to build something like a connection between them and see where they fit together and what are the areas that they overlap, but it's still ongoing, so it's not yet done. So, the first model, I believe you're quite familiar with this one, is stagnant stages, where it says the team goes from forming, storming, norming, and performing. It's extremely old, from 1965. I don't know if it longer applies, but what I know for sure is that new people, if you get them together without knowing each other, they will go to some of these stages. And from time to time, there will be some sort of storming. Someone will disagree with somebody, the team might break into what we call small churches. People will tend to separate within the team. So, this kind of behavior is noticeable in a lot of teams. For instance, this guy, I forgot his name, developed something like called the Cog ladder, which is a similar model, but he worked for Procter & Gamble. And he noticed this within his teams, where he gathered people from different departments, people that didn't know each other, put them together, and there was this, let's say at the beginning of a light stage, why we are here, power stage, where everybody's fighting to see who's the right one, cooperation, and he named something like esprit stage, something that is beyond being a group, you become a team. And that's the thing that we usually aim for. There are certain activities also that you need to do. This is the GRPI model. It says in order to develop a team, you will need to have goals, roles, procedures, and interpersonal relationship. And also, if you want to diagnose issues, you have to go the other way around. I don't believe this is quite right, but it kind of goes. So if you want to start a team, it has to have a purpose, somewhere to go. You need to state who does what and make it accountable. We need to have procedures. If I say procedures, don't think as processes, things that are strictly defined on paper. Maybe some agreements would be enough. And you need to have some interpersonal relationship. But now I have a question for you, because many of you mentioned at the beginning that you are a quality assurance engineer. Nobody, from what I recall, said testing. So we have no testers around, right? You hope so? So, my point here is that it's extremely important. If you are a tester and you call yourself QA, you set up higher expectations. It's not something that you do. Here's a list of, let's say, quality attributes that the software can have. How many of them are within your responsibility for quality assurance? So quality assurance is a big fancy word. You're not responsible for the code. You're not responsible for perhaps the quality of the manuals, the quality of the training that the product owner does for the customer. There are many things that you are not responsible for. And saying that you're a quality assurance engineer or manager sets higher expectation. If something goes wrong, who's to be blamed? But you have certain areas or certain aspects that you're working for. So, one important thing that you need to take into account that if you have to do certain activities, you always need to remind people more often. This is a quote from Samuel Jackson. I believe he lived somewhere in the 1700s. That people need to be reminded more often than they need to be instructed. So if you agree on something, make sure that you remind people all the time. I know if you know this guy, his name is Patrick Lancioni, he's a great speaker. Says that people have to hear things 7 times before they believe it. So if you agree on something and you want to go for it, make sure that you say it over and over and over and over again. Usually he mentions that people have to hear it also from different roles within the company. So you need to keep your ears and eyes open for trouble, because there are always trouble. And Patrick Lancioni made this model called the 5 dysfunctions of a team. If there is absence of trust between team members, if there is a fear of conflict, Again, remember what we talked at the beginning. There has to be conflict. If you want everything to be flower power, it will not work. Lack of commitment. Again, it's a bad thing for a team. Avoidance of accountability. And this happens especially if you don't have roles and procedures clearly defined and understood by everybody. Inattention to results. You do something and you don't care about it. For instance, I'm passionate about, you know, the NBA. Have you ever watched basketball? They have these awesome statistics. How many passes, how many scores. Why don't we have this for testers? How many bugs did you miss in production? How many bugs did you find too late? How many bugs you find in the right time at the right place? We should use this to look at the results, to see what we are doing. Another aspect is that certain behaviors and activities need to be encouraged. And here we have a lot of things from Google. I don't know if you know this, Claudiu, we work with Google.com. You know, we generally believe that Google is a successful company, but they have done a lot of research and they have tailored their activity based on what they found. They had this project for Aristotle, where they wanted to see what makes a team great. They went to such an extent, they give you the results of this project, not so much, they don't talk so much about the research. What they did was just put pins on people to monitor where they go in the office and to monitor the level of the talk that they have, if they argue, if they talk quietly. So they put a lot of work and intention in finding out what makes a team great. And what they found was that you need 5 things. First one is called psychological safety. The thing that everybody can speak their mind without fear of repercussions, without fear of being, mocked or made fun of. Just speak your mind. The next one is dependability. Again, you have to make account of the other people. Remember the part with the roles and procedure. Also, this involves something in dependability. You know who to count on. The fourth one is structure and clarity. Again, who does what, when, where. It has to have a meaning. The work has to mean something for the people. We tend to believe that only the younger generation look for meaning, but everybody wants to have a meaning at their workplace, to count for something. Even if it's financial security, even if it's you can express yourself as an individual, it has to have a meaning for you. If it doesn't, then you're in the wrong place. And last but not least, the impact. You need to see what's going on. You need to have a look, let's say, on production. Who uses the application? For what purposes? How many users you get there? It's extremely satisfying to see that somebody uses what you have tested and somebody appreciates that it's working. And also one important aspect is that you need management support and coaching. Why coaching? Because I believe that if you're in a group, it's extremely difficult to take a step back and look from the outside. You need somebody to look at your group only from your results and from a totally different perspective. There are a couple of models like T7. It's called T7 because every activity starts with a T. So the model says that to have a team, you need to have task, trust, talent, team. But also, there has to be a team leadership and a team support for the organization. The Hagman model is kind of similar, and it says that you need to have supportive organizational context. So in order to create a team, it takes some effort. In the end, if you manage to create a team, it will be quite rewarding, let's say, from a return of investment perspective. But you need to have this support. So what should be your takeaway on this? I went quite really fast on it because perhaps we have some more time for questions and talk afterwards. Is that a team doesn't just happen. There are a couple of models, there are a lot of smart people that build these models. You look at every triangle, there is a statement. You need to understand what's behind it. So what I would do if I were you, was just to look at these models and try to see what the person meant by that single word. Because there is a lot of things behind it. How you can get to it. And another aspect is I know if you notice, I never mentioned team management. Because being part of a team and creating a team is not someone's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility. You know that we tend to believe that testers should be providers of information, of relevant information for stakeholders. But I believe that's not enough. We're missing a key aspect. They should also be the ones that try to build a team, because they have an important role. Imagine if you work within a team and somebody always argues or fights with the developers for finding bugs. It will not be a good, let's say, work environment. It will be a little bit crappy. We'll talk later on about how to deal with this. But it depends a lot on you, if you're a tester. Next, one important aspect. So I kind of noticed that, maybe you would agree with me or not, many of us here are a little bit introverts, right? Okay, so how do we work within a team? How do we manage to work with teams? And first of all, let's just get clear, introverts is not the same thing as being shy. So you just tend to have your things for your own, you need some quiet time to think. So how do we fit into within a team? Well, the thing is that you fit awesome within a team. Remember that working within a team doesn't mean working together. And this is the biggest conundrum of all times. If you look at the, let's say, Scrum gatherings and meetings, during the planning meeting, the fathers of Scrum say the team has to work together. It doesn't mean they have to be in the same place. Together might mean that a group goes over there and talks about it. Somebody goes for a break and thinks about something. Working together doesn't mean being in the same place at the same time, thinking at the same thing in the same way. So being part of a team is quite easy for an introvert person. Sometimes you might find it difficult, let's say, to challenge things, but because you're there in the background, thinking on your own, you might have the best and the most awesome ideas. Because you're not, this is how you get. And apparently there is a transcendent power of solitude. And we tend to forget about this when we talk about teams. If you're working within a team, from time to time you need to take a break, to stand somewhere on the outside. Apparently the ancients knew this. Even Moses, Jesus, Buddha, and Muhammad went somewhere in the desert, somewhere they were alone, where they could think about stuff, challenge themselves, develop deeply. If we're together with only ourselves, then we start to come up with new and brighter things. Working together is good, but it also needs to have some, let's say, time out. From time to time, just get up. For instance, for me, smoking. Every hour or so, I take a 10-minute break. It's what helps me to go on. I'm not encouraging you to smoke, but perhaps you can find a way of dealing with yourself. And next, one important aspect in managing team is the goals part, and especially because we tend to see that there is a clear line between company-related goals and personal-related goals. And I have a story for you. It's called the Tempty story. It's from a guy from the software craftsmanship movement, Alexandru Marcuso. And it's more of a story question like. Imagine that you go to the dentist and he does some work on you, doesn't matter, but at the end he says, look, it's $50 or 50 euros for what I did, but you have to pay me 200 because I have to buy a book and I have to go to a seminar with other dentists. How much would you pay him? 50 or 200? Would you invest in his learning abilities, or would you pay just for the service? You have to make a choice.
Do I go regularly to this dentist, or?
Let's say you go from time to time, and every time the same thing happens. If it's not a book, it's a magazine. If it's not a magazine, it's time to read a book or things like that. So you always have to pay for what he has done, but also pay some amount for some things that he needs to do in order to.
200 is too much, Claudiu, because I'm not his only customer.
Okay, let's say
If it was, let's say, 50 and 55, I would probably pay 55.
Even 70. Yeah, 70 something.
It's just a degree of how much it's requested, how much belief we have put in, and whether it returns the investment. So you have factored quite a lot in this story. The initial thing would be, okay, no. But if I have the trust to this person, and if he actually comes with better and newer each time, then I will invest in him. Maybe we'll be actually giving him the tools under the initially requested. It really depends on how he performs.
Okay, now let's assume that everybody does this. The taxi driver, the receptionist at the hotel, the people that you came in contact with. Would you do it? Pay also for their training?
I think so.
We would even pay them less for the service. They are amateurs, not professionals.
So now imagine and switch perspectives. Think of yourself as your own employer. Why would an employer have to pay for your training? And not only for your training, but for everybody else's training. Because it's not only you in the company, there are many more people around.
Because they will earn more money on my back and increase the trust.
That's something that you believe. You believe. Maybe you will leave within, 2 months. Maybe you won't do the rest of the results.
I can tell you what happens from the opposite. When your employer doesn't pay for your training and doesn't invest anything in your development, you just leave your employer. At least it is how it is in the IT branch. If I'm a taxi driver, then probably it would be different because.
But within the same, let's say, parameters. If you don't get a good car, you might leave for another taxi company.
Yeah.
The point that I want to make here is that there is no clear line between something that you have to do for the company and things that you have to do for yourself. You also need to invest in yourself. And if you look on YouTube, on this guy, Alexandru Mancuso, for instance, he's from the craftsmanship movement. He talks a lot about how developers should learn for themselves first. And being employed is more about having a partnership with somebody where both sides contribute to anything. So you need to come up with something. So being at, let's say, events like this, it's an investment that you do in yourself. Maybe for this company, maybe for another, maybe when you'll be on your own, like Peter here. It should be an investment on things that you do, knowledge that you get, and use whatever you can. So hopefully you like the dentist story. Now, another important aspect, do you know this person? Carol Dweck, she's, let's say, the authority who defined the growth mindset. She says that your goal should always reflect your mindset. Where you want to go, you have to set a clear goal. But if there is no, let's say, clear line between company-related and personal-related goals, there is a big difference on how you approach them, how you challenge them. For instance, if you're dealing with company goals, the best way would be to have objective key results. And again, we come up with the thing that Google used this quite often. It's not, let's say, it's something that came up in the 70s or 80s. It's not something new, but they use it a lot. And how do you translate it? So, first of all, you need to have some objectives derived from the company goals, but there is also some negotiations, something that you need the extra one at. They have to be defined for a shorter time frame, not for, let's say, 4 years. They have to be public. Google went to that extent that if you look somebody in the company directory, next to his name, email, phone, boss, you'll also see his goals. Why? Because maybe you have the same things. Maybe you want something from that person that is not within his goals. Then if you go and ask, you should expect let's say, rejection. So it's important to know each other's goals. What about the key results? They have to be measurable and a little bit uncomfortable. If you can achieve them easily, then they're not real goals. And there also has to be a public evaluation of results. If you set goals from somebody, and there is, let's say, no review afterwards, not dealing with it, then they're useless. Do you agree with this approach? It's the simplest way. And now we come up to a key aspect when managing teams. Here you start to need a person to set up and manage these key results. Somebody to make sure that you define them properly, that you are okay with them, that you struggle with them, that you get to a certain point. And here comes, let's say, what I believe the role of the team manager is. That person that looks at your objectives, talks with you, knows what you want, and tries to define something together with you. That's how I see, let's say, a team manager, working especially on this area. You know this guy? His name is Dan O'Reilly. He's one of the, let's say, major figures in what's called behavioral economics. It's not such a new field, but it's a field where they try to understand why people behave so, let's say, differently. We were taught that within an economy, for instance, people will always look at the options and buy the best one. Well, reality is not like that. People tend to use different factors, emotional decisions come in place, and the economy is not something, let's say, in logical terms. And he says that we need to be very careful, especially when it comes to personal goals, that everything we do with time and money is a trade-off. So if you're here today, you're missing out on something. So you need to make sure that you get the best out of it so that you won't regret missing out on something else. And the problem is that we don't always see what we're giving up. So if you're here today, there is something you will definitely miss. Maybe you don't know what it is, but you will miss something. So make this day count. So it says how to deal with this approach. If you look at the long term, when you set personal goals, you tend to forget about it. You tend to procrastinate a little bit, just delay. So he comes up with this idea. He says, break down your big goals into small daily tasks. Write them down. So first of all, schedule the time to do those tasks daily. Enter your daily tasks into your calendar each day. And then you will manage to do it. I can say for sure that this approach works. Some time ago, I built something called the testing map, where I put everything that I believe a tester should know about testing. And I needed a way to, let's say, validate it, see if it actually fits. So what I did is search for testing blogs. I found around 300, 400 of them. And every day, for 30 minutes, I would read an article and see if it fits within the map. Within 6 months, I managed to go through, not completely, but go through around 5,000 articles. In 6 months.
You can show the output.
Maybe I'll show it later. The thing is that if you set up small chunks of time, but do it regularly, you will achieve a lot of things, especially when it comes to learning. And we also have a huge advantage, because everything that you need might be on your laptop, one click away. Imagine that, for instance, if you want to learn to become a better rally driver, you need a car, you need a place to practice, you need to get there. Also, if you need to learn to be a better pilot, you need practice. So we're quite in a good area where learning is just one click away. One other way to deal with personal goals is to draw your current reality. How do you feel right now? Is it good? Is it bad? And then draw where you want to get. How do you see, let's say, yourself in 1 month, 2 months, 1 year? What do you want to achieve? And then comes the hardest and the difficult part. Try to find those steps to get from now to then. Nobody can help you in finding those steps. You have to do them on your own. Perhaps you might ask advice, perhaps you might talk with a closer friend, but getting from now to what you want should be easy to do. Just imagine let's say the worst or the best desires that you have. You can get them if you put some intention into it. If you start to work. This is how I try to do it. I don't know if you can see it. This is behind it's a door, and I have printed every day of the week, and we will complete schedule. Because now I'm raising my daughter together with my wife, and we try to define some sort of times, because we both have our individual projects and we still have to be with the baby. It didn't work. We tried to make a schedule every day, we forgot about it. Something came up, a new teeth, she's crying, she needs someone. It didn't work out. We also tried, and this approach actually worked, to have a common calendar with events that we're going to, so that we would know not to overlap and somebody would be home. This thing worked. Again, when we started to give our daughter food, we made a small schedule, just to make sure we stick to it. Now I erased it because I don't need it anymore, but at the beginning it was something that we had to do, and it helped us enforcing certain rules. So if you want to change something, if you want to grow in some way, don't expect to do it tomorrow. It takes time, it takes perseverance, it takes a lot of effort. Now I'm going to talk about something called the moving motivators. Do you know it? Because the quick question is, what drives you as a person? Because your goals have something to do with what motivates you. Moving motivator is a concept from Management 3.0, and Jürgen Appel, the guy that is behind it, managed to build some cards with some, let's say, generic titles, like acceptance, curiosity, goal, status, freedom, and they have some small definition over here. The idea is to get them and to arrange them in an order that you have on the right the most valuable thing for you, and on the left the less valuable thing for you. So that you get an idea about what actually moves you. I can say from experience that it's a very difficult exercise, because you need to talk with yourself. And the next thing that you can do, this is, let's say, my approach, you can find a different one. Ask yourself this question after you arrange them. Does this influence my work in a good way? Yes or no? And if it's really important for me, what have I done about it? For instance, if you like order, there has to be something that you have done in the past weeks for it. Because there is a huge difference between what we believe we want and what we actually want. Between what we believe moves us and what actually moves us. And the next thing, and the next question will be, is there something I can improve? Something that I can change? And from this point on, you can find your goal. What I believe is a good practice is to take some tape, put it over it, and try to do the exercise again in 1 month. Yes.
And there's also a second part to this exercise. So if order is the most important thing for you, then take it and move it to the back. So for example, the company changes, and now it's not order, it's chaos. So what can you do about it without leaving the company?
Exactly. It's a good, important question. But the thing is that don't believe this stays in a single line for all your life. It changes from month to month.
I think it's a very tricky one, because it also depends on the context you are thinking while you are doing this. For example, order. I might want everything to be very ordered and well planned in my work, but when I go with Birana, for example, on a vacation, I just want to improvise and see something.
Yeah, but the big question here is, you want order in your work, but are you actually doing it?
No, of course, but
if you ask yourself these questions, you realize that actually order might not be that important for you. But you tend to believe that order is good. Why? Because everybody thinks we like order. But from order, you will never get nice things. There has to be some sort of chaos. And I remember a quote from Bill Gates. He said something like, first of all, I will always prefer a lazy person to do a job, because he will find ways of doing it faster. And good things are never done in a planning manner. You always have to do things in the last minute. And he mentioned that this, he realized this when he thought about how he challenged exams during school. You learn before you do it. You don't schedule. today I will read this, tomorrow I will review that. You don't do it. So, and this is this fight between real life and let's say what management tells us. Because if you look from management perspective, you need to plan things, have a brainstorming, make a plan. Muhammad Ali said something like,
Saving plan is good before you get a punch in your mouth.
before you get the first punch. So when you start the boxing game, it's good to plan, but every plan goes to rubbish once you get the first punch. So it's good to think about, let's say, different aspects, but don't invest so much time. Let's see what you can do. This, let's say, exercise, and the cards are free. If you go on their website, I printed a couple of them. If you want, we can do this during tonight. If you want to give it a go, I can tell you for sure it's extremely challenging because it's a talk with yourself, and especially if you do it, let's say, with a coach, with somebody that only asks you a couple of questions. So if this is really important to you, what have you done about it? Do you plan on doing something about it? Do you invest some energy into it? Why is it important? What are your expectations about it? And there are a lot of things that challenge yourself, and the worst thing is that you find out that you don't know so much about yourself, that there are things that you didn't imagine you would like. So you put it on the list.
Or if you want to do a change, for example, to change your job, we can use this one in order to see what's going to change in your.
For instance, if freedom is important for you, when you choose your job, you tend to ask certain questions. What's the, let's say, is there a strict time frame of being in the office? Yes or no? Do I have some spare time to learn? Do I have some encouragement from the company? So if you know these motivators, they help you in dealing with day-to-day activities. And also the aspect that I kept on mentioning is that they change. They are never the same. One day something is more important, another day another thing. But usually, what's important stays in front. It might change position. It won't happen that, let's say, if goals is on the first place, it will go to the back. It's seldom the case. It will stay, you'll have some top items on the way. And if you're interested, they have chosen, let's say, these motivators based on current research done by 20 or 30 people. So it's not like they put themselves in a room and said, look, these are the motivators, let's go. It's based on actual research and analyze the results.
Why the older standard better? Why the last thing is more important and the first thing is less important?
Because you need to make a decision about what's important for you. You cannot say everything is important for you.
No. I don't want to put all on the same level. I want to understand why first one is the less important, not the most important.
Because the first one is the starting point. And because you have a line which gradually goes from left to right.
So the question is why they are arranged from left to right instead of right to left.
You can put them in whatever you want, maybe top to bottom, it would be easier. So whatever order you think is right, left for you. So as I mentioned, next we'll talk a little bit about this growth mindset. I'm sure you heard about this buzzword, because everybody is now. And Carol Drake says that you can judge yourself if you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset by the way you tackle, for instance, challenges. Do you avoid them or do you embrace challenges? Challenges means dealing with things that you do not know, with things that you don't know the outcome of. That's a challenge. How do you deal with obstacles? Do you give up easily or do you persist in the face of setbacks? Again, you don't have to take them this literally. Because, for instance, if you realize that something is too challenging, too difficult, takes too much time, you won't get the results that you expected, you should give up. But don't give up just because it's difficult. How do you see effort? Do you see effort as fruitless or worse, or you see effort as the path to mastery? And this is, let's say, nowadays in the literature, quite challenging for the young people. They want to get somewhere faster without putting the effort. Just knowing something, it's not enough. You have to have some sort of experience. How do you deal with criticism? Do you ignore useful negative feedback, or do you learn from criticism? And since we're testers, and we need to talk a little bit about feedback. Usually, when we talk about feedback, we think of the sandwich hamburger method. You give a compliment, then some criticism, then again a compliment, so that the person wouldn't feel bad. Again, positive thinking. Doesn't work. Because once you start with a compliment, everybody expects the bad thing, then the second compliment doesn't count anymore, because you said the worst. So, again, it's a practice for management 3.0. It's called the feedback wrap. First, describe your context. Right? What's going on? Express your emotions, extremely important. List your observations, sort them by value, and end with suggestions. Sounds a little bit complicated, but let's see how it should go for a tester. Describe your context. I started testing on this field. Express your emotions. I feel we are not done yet with this functionality. List your observations. Found several more bugs and some questions. Sort them by value and then with suggestions. It would be very helpful if the first 3 bugs could be fixed by today and today. And the most important aspect here, we are not done yet. Imagine saying to somebody, you are wrong, or going to them and saying, we are not done yet. It's a huge difference. You give them the hope, the feeling that there is room for improvement. And this not done yet, it's something that we as tester or as quality assurance engineer, we should use often. So the growth mindset said that your mindset depends on how you look at challenges, obstacles, effort, criticism, and of course, success of others. Either you envy them or try to learn from them. You always need to use the power of not yet. We are not yet there. It's extremely useful. With a growth mindset, intelligence can develop. Draghia did some studies where she put some people with some monitoring devices, and people with a fixed mindset had a totally different, let's say, activity than people with a growth mindset when giving some problems to work with. And another aspect is that growing is a human need. You know Tony Robbins is an awesome, let's say, motivational speaker. He says that there are 6 human needs. You need certainty, confidence, certainty, significance. I'm out of time? No. Love and connection, you need to grow and contribute beyond yourself. And when we talk about contribute beyond yourself, especially in our field, is like sharing information with other people, coming to talks, to conferences. Have you been, let's say, to at least one conference this year? Awesome. You know, when I first started to join Tablet Testar, I realized that when you go to a conference or a gathering, one of 2 things might happen. You might feel bad, or worse, because you're not doing what the other people are doing, you're not at the same level, but you wish you were there, and you try to get some, let's say, motivation out of it. And another thing that might happen, so it's either 1 or 2, is that you know you're, let's say, stupid, but when you look around yourself, you become more courageous. Because sometimes, and we have to be honest, talks really stink. You don't get anything out of it. But what you might get is, okay, I can do this better. Let's see how can I do it. So you can also work with this bad emotion to get something to contribute beyond yourself. Again, change slows down, but not as fast as we think. Because we grew up, let's say, in this communist environment, we tend to believe of old people as people that do not change. But nowadays, it's totally different. Dan Gilbert came up with a study. He monitored the level of changes between different age groups. The first one was from 18 to 28, the last one from 58 to 68. And he asked them things like, how do you think you will change? What will you do in the future? And he measured that, let's say, predicted change. But when they were asked to report the change for the previous aspect, it was a huge difference. The level of reported change, for instance, for somebody between this age group, 18 to 28, was actually the change that happened around 50 years. So we tend to believe of us that this is it. We will change very seldom in the future, and this is the best we can do. And we don't believe that we will change that much. True? Dan Gilbert says that it has to do with the ease of remembering versus the difficulty of imagining. You cannot imagine yourself in 10 years' time. You can, let's say, dream about how it will be, but you cannot imagine yourself. And this is why it's called the end of history illusion. Because we tend to believe that this is it. This is the best that we will ever be, and there is nothing anymore we can do with it. Which is not true. We can always grow. Do you agree with me?
No,
No? Who doesn't agree?
just to make it
Ah?
comfortable.
Okay. So when we talk about this growth mindset, you have to take into account that we change over time. And only you have the power to decide what to change. Especially, let's say, older testers tend to become grumpy. Because you've seen this worst situation before, because you have said things, nothing happens, because you deal with the same situation over and over again. But to be grumpy, it's a choice. You will definitely change, but how you change, it will always be up to you. We're now close to the finish. So my final words for you would be that you have to contribute to your group becoming a team. Don't leave it to somebody else. It's not like you need a manager to manage the team. What I mentioned in this, let's say, talk is that you might need somebody to help you set up your goals within a company. That's it. You can help your group become a team. Next, there are team effectiveness models that can guide your journey. Don't believe that you know everything. There were people that studied behaviors, that looked at how people interact, learn from them. You saw those 10 models, you just give them a search. From time to time, just read it. See what applies in your context. How can you use it? Be a keen observer of mindset, values, and goals. What I tend to believe is that if you want to be part of a team, you cannot do it if you don't have a growth mindset. If you don't want to contribute beyond yourself, if you don't want to learn new stuff, it's very difficult to be part of a team. You always will find obstacles. And last but not least, make the team happen. It's up to you. Maybe not only up to you, but you have a big say in it. So that was what I planned to tell you about today. Hope I wasn't that fast enough. And here you can find the application, the small application. And if you have any other, let's say, articles or things that you think might be useful from a team perspective, just let me know and I will put it somewhere on the list. Now, do you have some questions, some comments, some things you might like to add, or?
I have a question.
Please.
How do you define conflict? Because this is actually a word which may have a very negative, but also very positive flavor. What you define as a positive flavor?
Let's say a disagreement where feelings are not involved, where you talk with arguments and you want to make a decision based on some oracles or some logic.
So it's more or less clashing how to do things, not on a personal level.
Never on a personal level. If it's on a personal level, then it's something that you should take outside.
Okay, so avoid personal, go to the...
Yes, and always, what I believe is useful, always try to ask the other person the question, why do you think this? Why do you believe we should do this? But because then you start not to challenge the idea, but challenge the thinking pattern. And there you might find flow, because many conflicts come, let's say, from a personal ego. People just tend to speak up their minds without even thinking about it. But once you get them to think about it, you get them to realize that they might be wrong, that they might be right, but from a different perspective, and you might find that there's a common ground where to get to, but no feelings. And if you find yourself in a position where you're angry, leave. I think it's not a shameful thing to be in a meeting where you stand up and say, I'm getting angrier, I have to leave. Do you know that if your heartbeat goes over 120 beats per minute, you're no longer using your actual brain, you start to use the part of your brain called the reptilian brain that is responsible only for reflexes and defense. Exactly, punching people around. So if you feel that your blood pressure is going up, stand up and leave, because nothing good will come out of it. If you feel you're angry and you're full of adrenaline, your hands start to shake, that's the moment to say, I'm out of here. Otherwise, nothing good will come out. And this is a thing that you can also take in your personal life. If you argue with somebody and you're no longer in control, stop the fight, because nobody will win. You will just start to say bad things, you will trigger bad reactions, and more bad things will come your way, and nothing good will happen.
Conflicts are more or less like gift conflict.
Exactly.
One side,
You have
the
to
other
mitigate
side.
it and see what has to be done in between. Because we talk about conflict because in, let's say, IT generally we have tons of possibilities of doing things. But only a couple of them are, let's say, the most efficient and effective. But there is no clear algorithm in defining them. So that's why we always have conflict on how to proceed. Because if you look at, let's say, the history of IT, it has never been about technology. There has never been a big question mark, what will we do next? Things evolve on themselves. But the biggest question is, how do we work together? How do we share information? Even specification, by example, came as a need to talk, to get people on the same page. So it was never the question of technology. It was always the question of talking with each other, of working as a team, of understanding the same thing in the same way, and working towards the same goal. Good. If there are no questions, then there are two things that happen. Either you didn't understand me, or I was clear enough so that no questions should be asked. Which of the two is it? None of them.
I have several, but I will continue drink lunch. So there might be third thing. People are very hungry.
Okay.
Already.
I like to say just one small thing. There is a Dan O'Reilly. Do we still have time? Or
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Can we watch a small movie? Just a small one.
10 minutes.
Please.
From your personal observations and experience, how much time does it take from a group to become a team? Of course, I know this depends on
Okay.
but generally speaking.
What I can say to you is never a question of time, it's always a question of decision. For instance, if on the team there is somebody that is actively disengaged, this means that he's so upset, angry, that makes other people angry. You need to make a choice, either to work with that person for the next 6 months and try to change him, or having him with the team. So it's always a question of choice, because this is one aspect that we haven't talked about from a management perspective, getting people to fit together. Sometimes you might think that 5 people might work together, but if you're wrong, act on it. Because if you just wait, things might change for the best, but things might change for the worst. So it's always a question of time. And also, I believe that it's, let's say, a question of honesty. For instance, if you're in a, let's say, power struggle state, and you see 2 people fighting, but fighting for the credit, for to get something, you can just stand up and say, look, from what I see, you have between yourself a power struggle. We are here to make a decision. Please have your power struggle. But later, now we need to decide upon this. So I believe it's not a question of time, it's always a question of action. how, if you really want to get there. But we tend to, let's not do it because we might get people upset, let's not have a talk with them, I know. We tend to avoid this thing because things might work out for the best. So if you want to make a team, you need to make sacrifices.
This is the Orion movie?
Yes. So, if you remember, I talked to you about behavioral economics. And here we see a small movie explaining it. I hope you will be able to hear.
Hello to everybody, and welcome to the class. I know there's all kinds of issues with registration and who is here and who can't, and we'll figure this out. For now, just relax, and we'll sort it out. I thought I would start by giving you a definition of behavioral economics. So, what is behavioral economics? So because I want to be precise, I'm going to read it. If one examines the standard economic narrative, man is faced with a choice. Either accept its dialectic, enigmatic theory, or conclude that the marketplace is capable of significant power of self-direction and governance. Moreover, given that, as suggested by Foucault, consciousness is interchangeable with language, this means that the power of economic theory is not limited to the marketplace, and instead, it is creating an internal and in some ways inescapable narrative within which we construct our ideas and aspirations. As a consequence, Wilson has argued that society is used in the service of capitalism. However, it is not so much that society is used in the service of capitalism, but rather it is the general and eventually fatal flaw of society. Thus, if the neoclassical economic theory holds, we have to choose between the self-governance of the individual and the economic actor, and the narrative of the capitalistic discourse. As best example of work in this area, the primary theme of the works of Adam Smith is the common ground between language and society. Several discourses concerning this abstraction, and some would say the economy in general, may be found. However, the futility and subsequent demise of sub-capitalistic theory, as depicted in Spelling's model, are self-evident. And this brings us to the big, I think, question that we want to address, which is,
I know exactly what the fuck I was talking about.
so, what I read for you was a sequence of randomly generated words. It's taken from an engine that is supposed to generate postmodern literature, and I embedded a few words about capitalism and Adam Smith in it. And what I want you to reflect for a second is the question of why didn't you stop? I kept on reading this nonsense for a while. You must have realized that you had no idea what was discussed, but none of you stopped. Right? And the question is why? And what I would suggest that this is a part of a behavior we call pluralistic ignorance. So think to yourself, you were sitting there, and you were saying, I have no idea what this is about, but you were looking at the people around you, and nobody of them were raising their hands. So you probably said to yourself, I must be the only person who doesn't catch it yet, and maybe later on I will catch it, but for now, I have no idea what's going on. Now, what we find is that pluralistic ignorance is especially powerful in big classes, which this is one of them. Imagine you were in my office, and you asked me something about the defined behavioral economics, and I went into reading this. How many of you would stop me very quickly? Probably all of you. You would not let me go through 2 or 3 sentences without stopping me. But somehow, because there are so many people around us, our tendency is not to ask questions. So the reason I want to start with this is that we're a big class, and we just started the semester. And during this semester, there will be many opportunities in which you'll feel that you're the only person who has no idea what's going on around you, and everybody else, you'll interpret their silence as meaning that everybody else is on board and you're the only one who has no idea what's going on. Try not think like this. And if you have any question during the semester, just raise your hand. You'll do a service for your fellow students.
I think you got the idea. So it's very difficult when there are no questions. So it's either one of the two. You are perfectly clear, or nobody wants to ask you anything or not understand. The thing is that I have to leave early tomorrow morning, but if you have any other question or would like to talk about something in regards to things, I'm here. Just take into account that we have covered only a couple of aspects. There are a lot of things to talk about when it comes to team. Communication channels, management, human resources, a lot of things. I just covered a couple of them, and especially those models, because those models are things that you can use, things that you can get inspired from. Especially, let's say, the Google one, where you just, for instance, make sure that nobody is criticized for asking the question. That is something that you can do as a person within a group and try to build it as a team. You can find a lot of inspiration in those models if you look at them. So if there are no other questions, I guess it's lunchtime, or
It is?
it's lunchtime.
It's lunchtime. So the lunch